Today we're going to be talking about balancing tradition with innovation. I get a lot of ideas. And I have a friend, a very wise guy. He'd say to me, yeah, we tried that. And he would say, do you want me to tell you where that leads to? And he would tell me where it led them. I don't think we're innovative in values.
Okay.
I think we discover values. Like one of our values is to build. So we're not changing the value of build, but we will be innovative in how we build community, in our projects.
This is the Disruptive Hope Podcast. Hope sees, hope engages, hope belongs, hope builds. Hope disrupts the narrative of despair, and in the tension of holding both sorrow and joy, we invite hope to redefine the lens through which we see and interact with the world. Embrace the challenge and become an agent of hope in unlikely places. Welcome to the Disruptive Hope Podcast.
Welcome to Legacy Shift. This is a podcast where we talk about the pitfalls and the joys of working with family in organizations that last. I'm your host, Dwayne Weehunt, co-founder of SOS International. Welcome back to the podcast. This is the Legacy Shift podcast that we're doing. And today we're going to be talking about balancing tradition with innovation. Like, what are those things that traditionally we believed and done, or what are those traditional ways of doing something versus can we try something innovative and new to bring a creative solution to a problem that hasn't seemed to go away? So I think it's important to remember as we talk about this that we're talking about human-centered design, that it's things that help and have the end user in mind. We're trying to bring, creative, new sometimes solution to very old problems. So this is Hannah Weehunt with me. She's going to be talking along today with me and asking some questions and joining into this discussion on innovation.
The youngest daughter back in the pod.
Yeah, that's right.
Dare I say the favorite daughter?
Yeah, well, I don't know.
I say it confidently.
You do say it.
I do say it. So name it and claim it. Speaking of tradition, no, I'm just kidding. Okay. Well, I have some questions around tradition and innovation.
Okay.
How do you think those two concepts interact? Are they opposing forces?
I don't think that they're necessarily opposing forces.
Mm-hmm.
I think originally tradition probably was innovation.
Okay.
So I think that probably the culprit is flexibility and change.
Okay.
That people, there's not enough pain to change. And, you don't change anything that you accept. Mm-hmm. That seems like a strange concept in a conversation about innovation. But really, if you're willing to accept that kids are being trafficked, if you're willing to accept that children are going hungry, if you're willing to accept that there's no access to clean water, if you're willing to accept those things, then you won't become uncomfortable in trying to figure out innovative new ways to get solutions to people that traditional solutions haven't reached.
Yeah. So I think that you kind of get to sit in an interesting position in this, right? Because you help meet needs like that.
Yeah.
Not every business does.
Yeah,
not
that's
every
true.
family business does. So
That's
I feel
true.
like you get to operate in some pretty natural clarity in that.
Yeah.
So maybe can we pull it a little bit away from something so extreme and balancing, which I do want to talk about it. I get
That's
it.
my
I know.
world. That's where I learned
I know.
this, right?
But
okay, so let's take it. I'm not a business guy.
okay.
So, at the risk of sounding elementary,
Okay.
I would say that, if you have traditional ways of doing something in a company, and, if you do something one way, you get the same result.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The definition of insanity is doing everything the same way and expecting something different.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as long as you are acceptant of what you get, you won't be innovative.
Okay.
I think it's the same concept that you have, something has to make you uncomfortable. Something has to make it painful enough for you to try something different.
Okay.
That pain could be profit, loss. It could be poor hiring practices. It could be a plethora of things that we have traditional ways of doing. But if we want to get a different result, we have to try something different.
Okay.
How's that? Was that better?
That was better. I feel like that's a little bit more universal and applicable. Which of these two things do you feel like you most identify with? Do you identify with tradition more or innovation more?
I mean, I think it's interesting because I like change. I like creating change. I think that's not normal, but I do. I like creating change. I like it when what you've traditionally done gives the result that you want. I also get very bored in managing the systems that create that traditional result. So me personally, I like to tend to the innovative side of things. But I also understand and value greatly the traditional side of things.
Yeah.
So, and I think the older I get, probably I shift a little bit back to more of the traditional way of doing things. However, I'm coming from such a far extreme. I'll have to live to 120 to get all the way back.
All of that.
Yeah, I think so.
So, I mean, I knew before I asked that question
You knew that,
what I assumed you would identify with.
Yeah.
But there obviously are a lot of traditional values ingrained in SOS.
There are.
What are some of those?
So, I mean, now you went to talking about values. I think values, I don't think we're innovative in values.
Okay.
I think we discover values.
Okay.
I think we make all of our decisions out of a value-based mindset. We understand what our values are. Now, like one of our values is to build. Okay, so we're not changing the value of build, but we will be innovative in how we build community, in our projects. So I think the value doesn't change, but I think the innovation comes in the part that is the end user, the person centric, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So maybe kind of where tradition is held a little bit tighter is around values.
It could be, yeah, and I think that's okay. I think that's right?
I mean, I was saying for us.
I think we do need to hold on to our values, and I think we don't need to be innovative in our values. I think we do need to discover them and work out of them, but let's not innovate values. But now I will say this, tradition, like if you're contrasting tradition with innovation, I think, you do something that works. It brings a solution in a given situation, whether that's in business or ministry. And I think as long as that solution gives the desired result, then you create a tradition of doing it that way. Now, I think where the innovation part of it comes in is if it's no longer working, or if you have a different set of inputs, so that just what you've traditionally done won't give that same output any longer.
Yeah.
That's when you need to be innovative.
Yeah. So you mentioned we don't innovate values.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about, so obviously that is speaking to SOS as a whole.
Yeah.
But one of the functions that you've served in, and one of the things we actually talked about at a staff training earlier this week was around our value C.
Yeah.
And talking about how one of our roles is to help other people see the need around them. Yeah. So how would you speak to maybe when values need to change?
When values need to change. So like if you don't have values, you need to set them?
Yes, or if we work in communities where oftentimes we have heard statements and phrases around, not from people we work with, obviously, because we work with the best people ever, but statements and phrases around like around trafficking women. We've heard it said, you have to leave some women there so that my daughters are safe.
Yeah.
Which that is not going to be, hopefully most people's views that are watching this podcast, listening to this podcast, but it is something that we've come against.
But see, to me, that's more of a worldview, right?
Okay.
But it's values.
But it's a value.
Yeah. So, like, I think it's very important now if we're talking about doing projects in places where they don't hold the same values you do. Mm-hmm. You have to make sure that you find common value. So, for example, it's hard to find common value with let's leave a girl here. Mm-hmm. But what they said was if that was our daughters, they had to be stayed. So now what I need to do is I need to tap into that value of them loving their kid, and then they need to embrace these children as their kid. Mm. Right? So mm-hmm. I need to just expand their value mm-hmm. to cover the people mm-hmm. who are at risk in that situation. Mm-hmm. So I think they have the value, mm-hmm. But they limit it to who they love. Mm.
So they just need help.
Yeah, I think they need help in that situation. Back to your point of mm-hmm. helping people see, mm-hmm. I think they need to see that those are valuable members of their society. They are their daughters in a sense. That they deserve the same protection, love, rights. Mm-hmm. They have all of the same value mm-hmm. that their daughter does. And I understand they have a different calling as a parent, but as a society, we have to protect those who are at risk. Mm-hmm. The problem is nobody is protecting them.
Yeah.
Right? So we have to help them see the value in those children.
Yeah. And you do that by innovating their worldview.
You do. You innovate their worldview. That's exactly what you do. You take something that they do highly praise, highly value, and you just help them see the value of the other. For sure.
You mentioned that you are a high change individual.
I am.
I know. I think I also am, so it's okay.
Yeah.
How do you find that balance? I think a lot of people you surround yourself with actually are. I think that is an attraction, but not everybody.
Yeah.
How do you help navigate innovation with people that are maybe a little bit more change resistant? Have you encountered that, and how did you navigate that?
I mean, definitely I've encountered it, 100%. I think anybody who is an innovator, they have a 30-year view that they wish would happen in 3 days.
Yeah.
So I think patience is a big part of what you have to have as an innovator. I think you have to celebrate small wins. I think you can't expect people who are resistant to change to jump in and want to change tomorrow. Mm-hmm. I think you have to help them step into that. And I think deep down, people understand that the gospel is change.
Okay.
I think they do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think sometimes you have to help them see that change is a blessing, that change is good, that change is your friend, that change is, you're not changing to the unknown, you're changing so that you can get a different outcome.
Mm. Yeah. One concept around this that I've heard you share a lot of times over the years is that a lot of times when we find ourselves fearful and afraid of change, it's because that we imagine a worse future.
Yeah.
And instead of imagining a better future.
Yeah.
How would you speak to kind of having that shift and that framework in someone and helping navigate that? Like if your default is not change is positive, change is my friend, how do you speak to helping develop that?
Well, first of all, I'm not a counselor.
Yeah.
But I absolutely do agree with what you just said. Obviously, there are people that are fearful of change. Mm-hmm. And once again, I began this discussion with, whatever you tolerate, mm-hmm. You're not going to change. Mm-hmm. And so I think there has to come a dissatisfaction with what you have. Sometimes that takes time. Mm-hmm. But I think ultimately we were all created for change. So I think ultimately we will all embrace that. And certainly a tactic of the enemy is fear. Yeah. Certainly. Yeah. And you just can't be fear motivated. Now, that's easy to say, not so easy to live sometimes. But I think if you're hearing that voice tell you, that it's going to be worse, it might be. Mm-hmm. There's no guarantees, right? Might be worse.
You just made someone go, I knew it. Yeah, I knew change wasn't good.
I understand.
And they turned off the podcast.
Let's hope not. Let's hope they didn't turn off the podcast. Because the thing is, if you continue to do what you've been doing, you're going to get the same result. Mm-hmm. So I think that pain threshold has to become enough that you're willing to change.
So have there been any instances for you as you've navigated this where you've had to, where that innovation, because you talk about pain, you have to be in enough pain to want a difference. Yeah. But sometimes that change also is pain. You can have to operate in pain to get to the other side.
It's disruptive.
Yeah.
That's
well, sometimes it's painful also.
Could be.
Have you had any experiences where you kind of have had to wrestle through, or are you just like,
oh no, oh yeah,
okay,
I definitely have had to wrestle through. Gosh, I would say I struggle with my weight. Okay. Always have. I mean, and for that to change in my life, the pain has to get enough that I'm willing to go out and do the things that are necessary for that to change. It's not that I don't want to change. It's just if I do the same things every day, I get the same result. So for that to change, there has to be some kind of pain involved.
Pain point.
Yeah, and then you have to decide how much pain are you willing to endure for it to change.
Yeah.
This is what you're bringing up, right?
Pick your pain.
Pick your pain.
What a positive message.
Yeah, this is a great podcast so far.
Pick your pain.
Yeah.
I mean, but it is true.
Yeah. I mean, running 4 miles is painful. Mm-hmm. Dying of high blood pressure is painful. Yeah. Pick your pain. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I mean, and I think that most of the decisions in life aren't what we're talking about now. Most of the innovation that we're talking about isn't what we're talking about now. I'll give you an example of how I see change and innovation in a positive way. Mm-hmm. So, you go into a community and there's a pocket of people that don't have access to food. Okay? And, you have one solution, and that solution, let's say, is we're going to bring food from somewhere else, and we're going to bring it there, and we're going to emergency feed them. That's an important thing to keep them alive, by the way. But now we have to innovate because we're not going to continue to bring food from far away. for long periods of time, in the times of migration, in the times of war, in the times of famine, in the times of some kind of disaster, yes, you have to do that because people are going to die, children are going to die. But now, to bring a long-term solution to that, you have to be innovative in your feeding program. So now you have to look within the culture and you have to say, okay, what can we do to bring food that long-term? So might be encouraging community land plots that people grow their own food, providing them with seed and, helping them to do those things. Might be something like feeding in schools, something that kids go to every day. Maybe they don't have a midday lunch program, but yet you can get food to those kids every day. And so what we've developed over the course of 30 years is multiple solutions to one problem so that you don't come at it with just one solution. You come at it with multiple solutions and you look at the long-term goal. What is the long-term goal? To bring stability to an at-risk kid in that community. So, yes, if you wanted to, you could just be emergency feeding.
Yeah.
That's all you did. There's plenty of emergencies in the world. You just go around and do that. But our goal is to see a kid that's at risk in the community not be at risk. Okay, so because of that, we've had to be innovative, right, to get a different result.
Yeah.
So that's kind of more how I would see the innovation work more into my daily life. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so multi-generational, working with multiple generations.
Yeah.
Do you feel like tradition and innovation can sometimes get lost in generational differences?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of times younger people are more innovative and want to try something new because they haven't had so much the long experience and landing on something that got some result that is acceptable, right? So let's just do that over. I can live with this. Let's just do this over and over.
Yeah.
And somebody comes along and says, well, I can't live with that.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. I don't want to do what you're doing. I don't want it that. So then I see those people as innovative. So I think it doesn't necessarily have to do with a person's physical age.
Yeah.
But I do think they have to have a young mentality. They gotta be willing to do something different. They gotta be dissatisfied with what the status quo is.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, not all of tradition is bad.
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to make sure we're not saying that.
Well, elaborate. You can elaborate on that.
No, I'm just saying, like, there's a lot about tradition that doesn't necessarily need an innovative thinking in it, that it's good.
Yeah.
So.
So talking about generations balancing this, there's definitely lots of space for tension, and there's definitely lots of space for disagreement. How do you think those things should be balanced in a way that honors? So maybe I can just take it from like a younger generation perspective.
Yeah.
I think that I'm a little fortunate that you do like change, so it's not too difficult to get you to try something new. You're like, okay, great, let's do it. But how do you approach maybe honoring what has been put in place, honoring that somebody took time to build this, and it was hard when they did it. No matter what they did, if they built a business, it was hard, and they did pave a way. They brought something that didn't exist into existence, and now you're trying to help level it up. How do you balance that tension and those disagreements in the middle of that?
I think ultimately we have to all agree with what we're trying to do. I think that's the first thing that has to be. There has to be a common vision, whether you're business, whether you're ministry, whatever you are. there has to be that common, there's the goal. We're going towards that. I do think it's difficult for myself. When I was 30 years old, I sort of thought I was Superman, invincible. You get beat up a few times, you find out.
You don't think it anymore?
Oh, I'm not Superman. Oh my gosh, right?
Yeah.
You learn. The Bible says, Jacob's angel touched his hip and he walked with a limp the rest of his life. And I've seen so many leadership teachings on don't trust somebody who doesn't walk with a limp. That's what happens. You get limps, right? I mean, you get in the creation of anything that's of value. It's hard. I always told you this. You've heard me say this 1,000 times. If it wasn't hard, it'd already be done.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, I think the older generation that's gone before you and before me, they've taken some lumps. Gosh, I think about some places where I'm in ministry once again. I think about places where churches were planted in countries that were completely opposed to churches, and men lost their lives and women lost their lives. And I remember reading a story of the guy that mapped Africa, and he said, great revival is going to follow this. He had one convert in his whole life, one. And yet he saw that by what he was doing, it was going to bring in this wave of people who were going to come in and love on people, and they were going to receive the gospel, the message. And he knew that thousands would get saved. And he said, hey, count those in my number, right? Like, he did the hard work that made that possible. And I think it's important in the church world and ministry and business. I think it's important that we understand those who went before us, they created some kind of platform for us. So they've gone through difficult things that allow us now to take it through more difficult things to grow upon. And I think, hopefully you guys will have more success than we ever did, because you don't have to fight the same battles that we did. I mean, so that's how I see it. I think that also the older generation needs to honor the younger generation and realize that they are the future, and you just need to make sure that they have the goal and they have the values, and let them run.
So what would you say to, you're in your mid-60s.
Yeah.
And I know you and Christy.
I'm in my young 60s.
Young 60s?
Yeah, I'm not mid yet.
Apologies. It's all relative, isn't it? I know that you and Christy have talked about transition on a podcast.
Yeah.
You're kind of in the middle of that. You have a lot of buddies in the middle of that, and or on the other side of that. And we talked about before, you have a lot of friends who run family businesses.
Yeah.
You have a few of them on the show, which is great.
Yeah.
What would your encouragement be to the younger ones coming in, or having worked alongside, because we've worked alongside you a long time. So we're not necessarily coming in, but taking over at some point. What would your encouragement be in navigating with the generation that's transitioning into something new?
Yeah. I think, once again, please be patient. We've done something for a long time. Like, we just have an ability that's been crafted over 30-something years, and now we're taking that ability and becoming a cheerleader with it, which is something I didn't have. I didn't have anybody that had stepped aside and was handing me a platform and cheering me on. So I think in some senses, you need to realize the advantage that you have, the blessing that you have. You're not starting at zero. There's something there. So, I think that's important to remember. I think it's important to, like I said before, remember the end goal. What's the goal? Like, if the goal is to help at-risk children, let's don't get so innovative in our processes that we're doing stuff that doesn't do that. Let's keep the main thing the main thing. And let's hold true to our values. I think if you have the goal and you hold true to your values, run. There's plenty of at-risk children out there that need, this is our world, right, that I'm talking about. I mean, if you're making widgets and, there's a need for those widgets in the world, then make as many of those widgets and sell as many of those widgets you can. But let's keep the main thing the main thing. Let's don't get lost, trying to recreate new widgets if that's not what's necessary, if this is working. So I just think it's important to embrace what is good, but remember the end goal and stay innovative towards the end goal. I think a lot of times businesses and ministries become irrelevant because what they originally started out doing is still a problem, but the way that they're doing it doesn't bring any relief to that anymore. It like, I'll use the church. Like, the church, if it's not in the community, like bringing health and life to the community, if it goes away and the church doesn't even notice, then
if it goes away and the community doesn't even notice.
The community doesn't even notice because it wasn't.
Then were you ever functioning?
The question is, what happened to that original vision? Let's keep the main thing the main thing.
So your encouragement to young people is be patient. And hold true to the values that help build it.
And also the goal. What's the goal? Anybody walks up to you and says, what's the goal of your organization? Whether it's business or ministry, you know what the goal is.
Okay, so what would your encouragement be to, because I'm sure you've had this conversation a number of times actually with friends of yours, what is your encouragement to guys that are then handing off the baton?
It's difficult for a season. Unless you're doing it, I don't think you can really understand how difficult it is, because you're used to showing up every day, and it's very clear what your line of work is. Very clear. And you do a lot of million things around that with team and staff and whatever, but it's very clear. And when you pass off the leadership to somebody else, it takes a season. I've heard numbers like it takes 12 months, before you really understand what your job is. I turned over like the leadership of SOS to Christy October last year.
Sure.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
I think so. I'm almost to October, but now, honestly, I was lost for 5 months. I was lost. Like, what the heck am I doing? Am I doing this? Am I not doing this? And lots of people on the outside still view me as that, and I have to make sure that my positioning and my words about Christy and my words about leadership here are directed towards her being the leader, not me anymore, which is hard because I created this place, right? The Lord created, but I created it. And so there's some identity that's tied up around that, and I think it takes a while to realize, that's not who I am. I'm not. I did that, but that's not who I am. And so now I'm getting more comfortable every day in what my role is.
I think I always think, too, about like you transitioning into a new space. And I think for a lot of families, too, that have that happen, recognizing that, I was in the office during all that time. So as someone who works closely with you, I identified that of like, okay, he's not super sure. But also keeping in mind, as the younger people, you made space for us to come in when we were unsure what our role was and bounce that out.
Yeah.
And so it's just there's a role, and now we're just balancing out how to find it.
Yeah.
I think identifying, when the younger people identify, okay, wait, they gave me grace to figure out my new season.
Yeah.
I can help, and not just gave me grace, help me find the path to my new season.
Yeah.
Great, I can help and champion that for whatever that next season looks.
Yeah, and I think you've helped with that for sure. You know, I think it's interesting too. I mean, I'm 62. I don't necessarily want to retire.
Yeah.
I still have a lot that I can do. I still want to do international projects. I want to travel. I want to do those things, right? But I look at some of my friends that sold businesses in their 40s. Oh, but then it's like, I mean, these guys are still stallions.
Yeah.
They still empire builders, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to go build an empire at
Yeah.
62 years old.
Well,
I'm not.
You never know.
I'm not going to do it.
You never know.
But I'm going to help support others doing that.
Yeah.
But I look at these guys that are younger, and I think, man, I think in some ways that was harder than what I had to do. Because, you know, I can go home and take a nap. They don't want to go home and take a nap.
Yeah.
They're ready to go. So even those guys, I've heard over and over, somebody in their life that was wise said, don't get in another business for 12 months. Just stay out. And that's hard, but it does that same work on the inside of you. You begin to realize, oh, my identity was caught up in that. That's not who I was. That's what I did. And so once your identity catches up with who you are, then you can build something again.
Yeah.
You can do something. You're in a healthier, more centered place, I would say.
Yeah.
So that's the advice I would give to the older guys.
Yeah. Okay, so working multi-generation, working with younger people, you've been around the block a few times. You've tried different innovations.
Yeah.
What have you ever been in a situation where there's a younger person who wants to be innovative and you feel like you've done that innovation before and it didn't work? And how do you navigate that?
Okay, so that's an interesting thing. I'll give you insight into who I am as an individual in innovation. I get a lot of ideas. I get a lot of ideas. Sometimes I think I have the best idea that has ever been handed to a man on planet Earth. This is going to change things, right? And I have a friend, a very wise guy, one of my board members, and he has done a lot of things, okay? And I would go to him and say, hey, man, I think I want to, I'm so excited about this, you know, and I'm telling him, and he says to me, this happened multiple times, by the way. He'd say to me, yeah, we tried that. And he would say, do you want me to tell you where that leads to? And I would go, yeah. And he would tell me where it led them. And it wasn't a desired location that I wanted to go to, but I saw, oh, yeah, that is where that leads to. So to me, I value that kind of input in my life. It saved me a lot of work and a hard lesson to get somewhere where I didn't really want to be. Now, other things I would tell him and he would say, I don't know. Why don't you try it and see what happens? But come back and tell me what happened. Right? I think that's the, position I would be with a younger person. I wouldn't want them to waste time and learn a hard lesson that this is going to directly end up here. But also, try stuff. You know? I really think it's important to have people in your life that you share ideas with. That you don't just do everything in a vacuum. Because other people can add so much value, and a different viewpoint of something is so valuable. So I tend to maybe overshare. But I love telling people, hey, what about this? What about and listening, not saying, hey, this is it, we're doing that, right? But sharing and then listening. What kind of feedback am I getting from this? Because it'll help shape, right? And a lot of times I have holes. Everybody has holes, right? You see what you see. So, but just because I can't see it all doesn't mean I won't step out and do something. I don't let blindness, like, take a step, evaluate, relook, take another step. Am I still going towards the direction that I want to go? Yeah, I am. Keep going. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going.
Yeah. Do you have any areas that you stepped out in innovation that you were like, oh, my bad?
I think one thing I would say, we did a project one time, and we had hoped that it would have a certain outcome, and put a lot of time and even some resources and a lot of effort internationally, and that project just didn't do what we hoped it would do. It was very painful because of the time, effort, resources, vision casting, all of that went into it. But I'll tell you one thing that I feel like this, Hannah, that nothing is wasted. Like, you learn, right? And any learning that I do, I feel like at some point that learning will be valuable in the middle of a season that I'm in. So sometimes the point of going down a road is simply to learn. And you learn and you go, oh boy, I wish I didn't know that. And then you come into another season and you're like, oh boy, I'm sure glad I experienced that, because I don't want to go down that road again.
Yeah.
So I think just, for sure.
So you've innovated and it you didn't land up where you wanted to be.
Yeah.
Can you speak to recovery in that, and how you don't revert back to, all right, we're just going to do it the way we've always done that, but recovery of that, and then the ability to innovate again?
Yeah, I think once again, if you view it as a failure, well, that was a failure, or you're a failure, you'll quit innovating. If you view it as a learning process, it's just a part of the journey. It's a part of the process. Okay, now I know that. So, but I feel like, until every at-risk child is in a community where it's safe, why should I stop innovating? As long as I breathe, I should continue to try to figure out ways to bring stability to their community, whatever that is. Right? Now, the way I do that may change. I might just become a fundraiser. I might just become a marketer. You have the same exact goal that I do. You're broken by seeing children that their communities can't support who they are, and their lives get destroyed. And you're using the gift and talents God gave you, and you continue to, and you're innovating in that process to try to figure out how to be more effective. And the goal is to raise resources and to educate people. That's the goal. But you continue to do that because those girls are still at risk, right? So, that's the same for me. I went down a road. Yeah, it was expensive. Yeah, it was time consuming. Yeah, it was hurtful. Yeah, it was painful. But guess what? I learned something. So.
Okay, so what about when the innovations start to clash? You got a lot of people. You attract a lot of changers. You like people that like to innovate, that like to change, that like to mix things up, who now have been given autonomy to go and do that. What happens when innovation starts to clash?
I mean, that's the beauty of Christy, right?
Okay.
Christy will create a system that
We'll help it not crash.
it'll help it not crash for sure. I think Leslie does that some too. I mean, this is what you asked me. I know you're taking a concept and now you're going to try to make it real, which is hard. You just put me on the spot with that and it was hard.
So you're going to do the same thing to me.
But tell me, what are you talking about, innovations crashing?
Maybe instead of well, okay, I'm pivoting the question because I can't answer it, is what I'm doing. I'm innovating this question. Live action innovation happening. Because I'm like, what happens if you have to pick which innovation? But that can kind of be a crash. When funds start to...
I think if you have to pick innovation, that's a great thing. That's a creative process.
Okay.
I mean, we sat around a table this morning, right?
Yeah.
Talking about ideas and concepts. And honestly, there were 5 different directions that came forth in that meeting, and I walk away from that like, praise the Lord. I mean, that's so awesome that think down that line, think down that line, think down that line, think down that line. Just be thoughtful and innovative in it. And once again, they'll all learn something, and at some point it'll be valuable in the process of reaching an at-risk kid. So yeah, I don't see that as clashing. I see it as learning.
Okay, what about when resources
so
are
now,
thin?
that's a different question.
That's a different question.
If you're asking me, so I think the point of one of those pain points for innovation is a lack of resources. It's certainly been that in my life. Like, you have to learn how to do things cheaper, better, faster. Like, create new supply lines sometimes, right? So I don't necessarily see a lack of resources as innovation killing. But I do see that a lack of resources is the birthplace of innovation. So, for example, you want to do an album, but you don't have the resources necessarily to do the album. Now we have to have a resource question, and we got to innovate.
And my innovation is coming to you and saying, I don't have the resources.
Yeah, but sometimes...
It's a great innovation. 10 out of 10
but
recommend that innovation.
Once again, this is what you did with the question I threw back at you, right? I think you're just going to have to learn to be innovative with resources, too. And I think that's one of the things our whole organization is having to learn right now.
Everybody.
You know? I mean, all of us can spend money.
Yeah.
It's the same with business guys.
Yeah.
They can all spend money.
Yeah.
The question is, can you spend it in such a way that it brings a return?
So have you ever, I feel like I know the answer to this question before I'm asking it, but have you ever seen with someone on your team an area that they're going to have to innovate in, but they haven't quite reached the pain threshold yet to do that?
Yeah.
How do you navigate that?
Patience.
Okay.
You got to let them get to pain. And I tell you one thing there was a challenge. This is a great question you just asked me, because this was a challenge for me. Like, I'm a dad. I want to take the pain away. I want to step into it and be the solution. Like you said, your solution is come to me and get me to raise the money. Right?
Only in that instance.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, what I'm saying is...
And I also had to help with a lot of it.
Yeah. So sometimes you can do a disservice. Like, the organization needs to feel the pain, and they need to feel the blessing. Both.
And that is harder, in your opinion, in family businesses, family organizations.
I think it's harder regardless. I think it's harder in the human experience. You don't want people to feel pain. And we're not talking about pain because of decisions. We're talking about pain that causes innovation. That stress, that, oh my gosh, I don't have the resources. How am I going to get the resources? Right?
Yeah.
What has to change for that to happen?
So you just got to let them sit in it.
Sometimes, yeah. That's what I had to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you have to realize that, like, in a lot of these things, you're talking about 30-year-old processes in my life.
Yeah.
Heck.
So now I have a question.
Yeah.
What if, now I'm speaking as happy people on the team, what if them not feeling pain is painful for me?
Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. As the leader, that's the tension you have, right?
So is it just your pain tolerance has to grow until they can feel the pain to innovate?
I think, A, yes. Yes, I think that's true. B, there has to be systems in place so they can really evaluate where they are. If there is no system, there is no, like on a dashboard of a car, if you don't have that red light that comes on when you're revving that engine too far, right, that engine will never feel pain. You better back off that red light. So I think systems are the answer to that question.
Wow, a statement I never thought I'd hear you say. Systems are the answer. Where's Christy? She needs this moment.
Yeah, but systems that measure the right things. Measure the things that you're feeling tension over for them that they're not feeling tension over. Right? And I also think coaching is important. You know, we do coaching in our organization. We have for a long time. I think it's important for somebody to just sit there and say, okay, what's the goal? What are your action steps? They come in the next time. Okay, where are you at in your action steps? Oh, I haven't done anything. Well, why haven't you done anything? Right? Just that little bit of accountability. Accountability will further that process on. So coaching is important. Just to sort of land this ship somewhere, I want to share with you some key aspects to innovation when it comes to charity work.
Okay.
I know we have business guys listening on here too, but I think it's important, I think, for them to identify what are key aspects for innovation in their work. And these are the things I would say. Number one, creative problem solving. Finding new ways to address pressing social challenges such as poverty, education, healthcare through fresh, innovative approaches. So creative problem solving. It's a birthplace for innovation in our industry. Leveraging technology. Technology is changing so much. Like blockchain, I don't understand it, but I think it can be big in alleviating food problems around the world. So, you know, I just think that it's important for us to be open to new forms of technology and to study new forms of technology. And I just think that there is a innovative process for what we do in technology. Sustainable solutions. This is a term you hear a lot right now in the charity world, and it's the idea that we create things in communities that can last, right? And so I think that there's a lot of birthplace for innovation. We've done a few things looking for sustainability in projects. Now, I wouldn't say that we've always been successful in them, but that shouldn't keep us from innovating and trying, right? Collaboration and partnerships. I mean, it is so important that, once again, like I asked you about different viewpoints, it's so important in a community that different viewpoints are seen. It's so important in a community. I believe that if we have big social issues, we need the government involved in the solution, we need business involved in the solution, and we need the compassion and care and love that charities bring into a solution. And so I think charities can drive that, I think government can drive that. I think business can drive that. But we need to work together, or else we can't bring innovative solutions to communities. I mean, governments have access to things that we don't even understand or know. Resources, talking about resources, government has resources. Business, I mean, they have access to technology and innovation in technology that could be so helpful in trying to solve problems in communities. And there needs to be a partnership, a collaboration of those things working together. That's a key aspect, I believe, of innovation. And then adapting to change, being agile, responsive to shifts in the environment, whether it's social trends, economic changes, or new technological advances. And I think if we continue to embrace those things and to continue to be open to those things, I believe that we have the resources and the technology to really make big social changes in our generation.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, thank you for letting me come and pick your brain about tradition and innovation.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
It was good. Thank you for being here, and thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this rambling conversation we had about tradition and innovation. And I just encourage you to be open to change and to innovate.